where to start with this one. This episode had so much going on in it. And it's another very good demonstration of just how good the writing is on this show. I watched it yesterday, and I watched it again just now. And I found that there was so much in the second viewing that I caught that I didn't see before. As far as Easter eggs go, I still don't know what the deal is with that NPC, supposedly an NPC at the end of the last episode who was watching them. That's still an up in the air question. But there was an Easter egg where Kane was looking at a photograph of the computer that we saw in episode 1, which of course is supposed to be the computer in the abandoned building that Pomni references in the last episode, which is how she got into the circus. So again, I don't know what the significance of that is. There's also one part, kind of toward the end, that I don't fully understand the significance of either. Although there are different ideas that it could be. There are different explanations for what this could be, but I'm not sure if we are supposed to be able to figure it out yet. Or if learning more about this character in the future will help us understand this moment more. But there's a part after Zubul shoots Pomni and Jax, where Jax is on the floor and he sees Kaufmo's door and he gets mad. And then he sees the door of his old friend who abstracted before Kaufmo, who I believe the Gooseworks confirmed was named Ribbit. And he just kind of has this reaction where it's like it inspires an idea in him and then he leaves. And we see, of course, then he ends up going down to the main area of the tent and helping Pomni defeat Zubul. But what exactly that moment was, what he was thinking, what idea he got, if that was even what that was about, I'm not sure. I think that there's implications here around Jax not, like, having a conflicted thing where he likes Pomni and he wants to be more friendly with Pomni. But because of his experience with Ribbit, he doesn't want to get too close to somebody. And we see that really well done at the end when Pomni really confronts Jax. And that was interesting because it was foreshadowed earlier when she starts talking about his fear of corn. She says, she just confronts him, and she's in this state of mind where usually Pomni is very conciliatory and doesn't push things. But with Jax, she's starting to really push him because I think she's expecting more from him. And she sees in him someone probably who she can relate to more than the others, which is interesting. Because he seems the most openly contemptuous of their situation, the most unapologetically contemptuous. I had to change my battery because I guess I put in a bad battery to start off with, so I only got 4 minutes of footage. Anyway, that's why there's light now, because I had to turn on that power source. But anyway, Jax seems most openly contemptuous of their situation, which I think maybe strikes a kind of honesty to Pomni. And Zubul is also openly contemptuous of it. But I don't know. I think there's something about Jax's mean-spiritedness that in a weird way kind of resonates with Pomni. It's almost like Pomni has all the doors open for her. As Jax actually said in this episode, he said that, and this is one way that this episode is really advancing the conceptual themes. I'm going on tangents within tangents here because there's so much to unpack here. It's such a good episode. But there's that part where Jax is talking to Pomni about kind of the cartoon, and this is the episode where they really acknowledge that they're a cartoon more than any other. In fact, Jax even mentions the fact that he breaks the fourth wall out loud. They know that they are cartoon characters. They know that they have become this weird kind of cartoon show, and they have this self-awareness about it. But you see here, with what Jax is telling to Pomni, that it's affecting their minds in a way that they are... The show is aware of how cartoony not only the look of it and the situations are, but the characters themselves are. That these characters, Kinger and Ragatha and Jax, and they have these cartoon personalities. Their personalities aren't even really human personalities. They are cartoon characters. They are characters written by Gooseworks to be a cartoon. And here it's so clever because they acknowledge that. Jax acknowledges that. He says, you know, the longer we've spent here, we have lost our human authenticity, and we have just kind of become these archetypal roles. So Ragatha's the nice one, Gangle's the sad one, Kinger's the crazy one, and I'm the funny one. He wants to be the funny one. That's what he wants to be. But of course other people don't think he's the funny one, and that's what's interesting. And that, I think, reflects a split in the audience watching the show too, on a meta level, that some people do think of Jax as the funny one. Others are very disturbed by Jax, and they don't think of him as the funny one. He's just mean. And we see in this episode that Pomni kind of wants to view him as the funny one. She wants to see where he's at and relate to him on that level. But by the end of the episode, she goes, no, you're not the funny one. You're just mean. So they are aware that they are cartoon characters, and even more than that, as they spend more time in this environment, they become cartoon characters more than they already are. They become more cartoonified in their personalities. They lose themselves in their sense of reality in that way. And that's very conceptually interesting. But in that way, Pomni has all these doors open to her for different potential ways that her character could evolve. Ways that her character could be pigeonholed. Archetypes that her character can fall into and become more absorbed in. And so I think here she's experimenting with being more like Jax, being kind of the evil one. And seeing if this is something that she wants to do. Maybe that was even foreshadowed earlier with Evil Pomni in episode 5, who has the sharp teeth. And whenever, that's something I love about the animation here, whenever she's evil or even just talking about being evil, her teeth become sharp. A really good detail. But she, talks to him about his fear of corn. And that's like a little way that it's foreshadowing the end of the episode, because here she's confronting him as she's embracing her more evil side. She's just like, all right, I don't care about his feelings. I don't care about offending anyone. I just want to know. She confronts him like, tell me what the deal is with the corn. And you can see that he's like, okay, I'll let her in on this. She cornered me. She's not going to let me get away with it. Yeah, I'm afraid of corn. because it's just weird looking. But then you can see he regrets telling her that. You can see in his face. I love the details and the subtleties of the facial expressions in this show. You see in his face that he regrets telling her that. Like, he even that was opening up too much for him. That was showing too much vulnerability. That was a dangerous kind of letting his guard down. And he feels bad about that. And I think he even says he's going to regret saying that the next morning. And so, yeah, by the time it gets to the end of the episode and she really wants answers, she really wants to break through his defenses, he's just seized up even more. But even as much as he is closed off and defensive, she's still getting to him. She's still making him mad. He can't fully detach himself and be totally aloof like he wants to be. And that's really frustrating to him. And he starts swearing. And he just goes off and just sulks. And then you see him have a panic attack later, which is, hinting that he's getting closer and closer to abstracting, because that's kind of what happens to these characters when they start to get too stressed out. They start to abstract. And we even heard him say, what happens when people abstract? They become really bad to be around before that. And, that's what's happening to him. He's becoming very unpleasant to be around. Another really interesting conceptual development in this episode is in the scene with Gangle and Zubul, where Zubul, for the first time, seems ready to accept the reality of her new body. The reality of it. And this is the thing, Zubul has this whole time been focused on how unreal everything is and wanting a sense of reality. And being disdainful of this unreal body of hers, especially because it's just all weird and abstract looking. Abstract, the idea of abstracting mentally. Your body is a physical reflection of what's going on in your mind, and vice versa. It's one more thing to bring her closer to the edge. She's someone who really feels this need to be grounded in reality, which is kind of the whole theme of episode 2, which she wasn't really much of a part of. But here, in this episode, she's talking to Gangle, and they're talking about how their bodies have gimmicks the way the other ones don't. So Gangle has the mask, the comedy mask that falls off and breaks all the time, which is, representative of her bipolar disorder. And then Zubul, who is transgender or gender non-conforming, non-binary, has this weird disassembled, reassembled body with different parts that she can put on and detach, and they all look really stupid, like, children's toys, like a weird cobbled together Frankenstein arts and crafts project. It's like not a real body at all. But here, what Zubul says is interesting, because Zubul says, no, we have to accept this because this is real. And what's funny is I never thought about that, which is, yeah, you can think, oh, this isn't real. But at the end of the day, no, this is real. This is reality now. You have been living in this body for so long. This is your real body. And so you have to accept it because it's real, And that is fascinating, and that could be kind of the key to helping Zubul maybe get over a bit of this difficulty that she's had with being able to accept her situation. So we see Zubul and Gangle kind of learning acceptance in this episode. And another aspect of the cartoon concept is that in this one we have several instances of the characters doing things that they know are cartoony, like cartoon logic, and they work. So like when Ragatha is missing a heart because of the fact that Jax shot her before the game even started, it was kind of unfair. Kinger just gives her a butterfly. He's like, "Oh, take this. It'll heal you. It'll give you another heart." And she's like, "Oh, did Kane tell you that?" And he's like, "No, I just made it up." And he just magically produces a butterfly out of thin air, which is, of course, something that Kinger would do because he's too insane to he's too insane to realize how unrealistic that idea is. So he just believes it can happen conveniently for the sake of the cartoon logic. I guess Kinger is one of the most cartoonified characters in the show in that way. But then, because of that, Ragatha gets this idea in her head that, oh, maybe cartoon logic works. And so when Jax points a gun at her, she sticks her finger in the gun and it blows up in Jax's face and takes one of his hearts away. And she's like, wow, that actually worked. I didn't expect that to work. And then what's fascinating is, like, that's a funny moment, but then Jax shoots her and he's mad and he shoots her a few more times when she's on the ground. And you can just see in his face, he is angry. And it's one of the things that this show is so good at is, like, creating a moment of levity and then immediately bringing you down from it. Or putting in just something awkward that disrupts the tone of it. And a lot of moments that you think would have music in this show don't have any music. Like when Pomni decides to embrace her evil side. There's just this awkward silence going on through the whole thing. And I like that. I like the fact that there's this kind of tonal ambiguity here. Because it sort of represents the conflict between the reality and the cartoon aspect of it. And how these two things are clashing against each other. And so, yeah, that moment, that little moment where Jax gets too angry. Like, he shouldn't get that angry. He's a cartoon character who got a gun blown up in his face. But it really made him mad, as it would make you mad in real life. But he's supposed to be a cartoon, and he's supposed to not care because he's a cartoon, and that's what he said earlier. He was like, you know this isn't real. You know you don't have to care about any of this. But here he is caring about it. And it's just, that's the cognitive dissonance there of not being sure how much to embrace the fakeness or the reality that you once perceived as fakeness, which is being a cartoon character. And how much that simply isn't going to work, or how much it's how undesirable a concept that even might be to you. As Zubul found it a very undesirable concept at first, but is now learning to accept it, whereas Jax found it a very desirable concept in order to cope with this problem that he's in. But now he's finding it harder and harder to do that, to embrace it. And so we get this kind of, like, Zubul is going one direction, Jax is going the other direction. Really conceptually fascinating stuff. I also want to say, I think my favorite character in this show is Bubble. Bubble is just hilarious to me. I love every moment Bubble is on screen. Bubble is always doing something funny. And I love that part where they're singing Daisy Bell to Zubul, because Zubul brings up that Kane was... like, Kane has this obsession with Zubul. in this show, because Zubul never wants to acknowledge Kane or participate in Kane's adventures, and Kane feels very slighted by that. But he can't directly express offense to Zubul, because it's not really in his nature to do that. He has to be this kind of showman, ringleader. And so he just kind of lashes out in weird passive-aggressive ways. One of those ways was in the last episode when he, does that rapid-fire thing with all the suggestion box suggestions to prove that his ideas are better by just kind of putting no effort into them, half-assing their adventure ideas. And so, like, he's very passive-aggressive in that way. Kane is unable to be overtly confrontational. It's just not in his nature to do so. And so one of the ways he's doing that is trying to get Zubul's attention all the time. Like, kind of, like, weirdly stalking and obsessing and simping over Zubul. Like, I love in episode 3 when he makes that whole adventure for Zubul and Zubul doesn't want to participate, and then you see, like, he programmed into that adventure, ooh, this door is the spooky scary door for mature Zubuls only, because he's so dumb. He thinks that the reason Zubul doesn't like his adventures is because they're too tame and Zubul's just too cool for that. But he just does not get Zubul at all, but he's obsessed with Zubul, I think, because he feels like Zubul has to get me. Zubul has to like my adventures, because if Zubul doesn't like my adventures, then how I'm not a good ringleader then. But he just does not understand her. And it's really funny seeing the ways that he tries and fails to connect with her. And so, like, yeah, Zubul says in this episode that he was just singing Daisy Bell next to her door to try to get her attention, which is hilarious. But and then Pomni and Jax start singing it to her to mock her and goad her into coming out, which is a great callback to that, and it's a great scene. I think it's a great, like, bonding moment for Pomni and Jax, and I like the I like their harmonies. But also there's a sort of referential aspect of it with Daisy Bell being a very important kind of iconic song in the realm of computers imitating humans, because it was the first song that a computer ever sang, and then it was used in by the IBM HAL 9000 computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey, as, like, when his memory is getting taken away and he's reverting back to his most basic, first programming. That's the last thing. He's going, like, backwards in time. That's the last thing is Daisy Bell, and that he starts singing. And so, yeah, it's just a very thematically appropriate, well-chosen song for that, because Kane is not a human, but he's trying to imitate a human, trying to pretend to be one, to understand Zubul, someone he just is never going to understand, because he just fundamentally doesn't understand humans. And we can also see it with Pomni and Jax, where they are kind of in this awkward situation where they're not really sure if they are humans anymore. And we don't, as an audience, know if they're humans anymore. They could just be computer programs imitating humans, or computer programs who think that they're humans now. We don't know if their bodies even exist anymore, if they're dead, like, what's going on in the real world. They could just be uploaded consciousnesses in the machine. So just another just little detail that adds so much, I think. This is definitely my favorite episode now. I think for a while my favorite was episode 2. Although the last one, episode 5, was kind of a good runner-up for me. But this one is just perfect because it has all the conceptual stuff that I loved about the first 3 episodes. And it's doing what I hoped the series would do, which is, you know, after it had the last 2 episodes that focused more on character development, it's kind of bringing the conceptual stuff back into it slowly. And so, yeah, it's just a good marriage of the two. It's very long. It dwells on certain moments, like the end with Pomni and Jax's confrontation. It really just lingers on that and lets the whole thing play out as long as it had to take. And it just feels earned. It feels real. It feels special. The show is very special. There isn't a show quite like it. Very concept heavy, very subtle, very humorous, very expressive, and with a lot of depth in it. And this episode, I just think, did all of that. It just married all of those things very well.